As people are coming in, we will just welcome them with open arms. Today we're doing our Air Force Community Tech Talk 3, and we're going to be going over the IT Operations Management, otherwise known as ITOM, Visibility and Health. I am Jen Bargiel. I am a solution consultant on the Air Force team, and I'd also like to introduce Christian Malone. Christian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi there, Christian. I'm a former customer and I'm focused on our IT workflows for our federal customers.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Christian. He's going to be providing a lot of information for us today. We do have this being recorded, so if we go over some topics today that you'd like to re-review, we are going to share this in our community center for future reference. And so our quick agenda today, we are going to go over ServiceNow and how it's a platform of platforms. Christian is going to go over ITOM and AIOps, and then we're going to leave the last 10 minutes for question and answers. But if you have a question during the session, please don't hesitate to ask by utilizing the Q&A feature down at the bottom of your screen. Okay, so what is ServiceNow? So ServiceNow, we like to claim that we're the platform of platforms because what we do is we connect many different facets together. And so that's allowing digital workflows to enable a seamless process for your airmen. And that really is bringing to light some features that currently aren't available. What we like to do is enable great workflow and employee and customer experiences to enhance productivity. Now, how do we do that? What we do is we enable one platform, one data model, one architecture. And what that really means is that we have a CMDB on the back end that allows everything to be connected together through workflows and integrations that naturally allow for things to work better together. In our society and our technology, as things are moving forward, things tend to be siloed and disparate, and ServiceNow is excellent at bringing those disparate systems together. And that's where we really have the bread and butter. We enable a service catalog with the knowledge base for that self-help ability. And then there's also the workflows, integrations, as well as the AI and machine learning to enable further enhancements with our technology. Now, when I talk about workflows, I'm talking about the interconnectivity of seamlessly streamlining processes so that they're going on in the background, so that from step one of starting a task to the completion of a task, that the work is being completed without someone handling it every step of the way. Instead, it's being done by technology and enabling you to utilize your time in a more efficient manner. IT workflows is where ServiceNow really cut its teeth. IT is service desk, your operations, your business management, as well as software and even security operations. When we're talking these IT workflows, we're talking about bringing all of these systems together to enhance your availability for IT. And then we've got things like employee workflows and customer workflows. Employee workflows is really all about your airmen and being able to connect all of the dots. So bringing on an administration team and being able to have your HR team, your personnelists, being able to onboard someone from the cradle to grave cycle. And then your customer workflows can include anyone from your airmen to their family members or to your civilians. So having that outward facing ability, so answering questions like AFIPS and being able to pay an airman or their benefits, that would be included in our customer workflows. And if any of those three workflows don't actually encompass what you're looking for, there's an app engine, and there's also a store that we have that has utilized other customers from ServiceNow in our store to enable you to utilize something that's already been created instead of recreating the wheel. But in the instance that you need to recreate the wheel, we have the app engine to make it so it's a more custom application, but it's still easily configured with low code, no code, or even pro code options. And when we're talking about great experiences, especially for our airmen, we're talking about the mobile, web, and conversational, bringing the natural element of home life into work life. So those Siris and Alexas are really able to work in the same environment by having that mobile capability and that web capability, as well as conversational. Airmen are used to having that easy life cycle at home, being able to say, hey, I need this, and it happens in an instant. Being able to bring that into the workplace is going to make things more efficient. And ServiceNow really is the platform of platforms because we integrate all of these systems of record. We understand that we aren't the experts in everything, but we are the expert in bringing them all together. And so you can have an infrastructure like AWS or Azure and partner that and bring that information together in our platform and able to communicate and integrate so that the information that you're looking at is still live and from the initial system so that we can bring together a solid infrastructure. When we're talking IT workflows today, there are so many that go into that. So there's your service management, like your service help desk. But today we're going to be going over the operations management, specifically the visibility and health. We do have optimization, but that's not what we'll be focusing on today. And now I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Christian.
Thank you. Let me share my screen here. Okay, how's that coming across?
That looks great, Christian.
Great, thank you. So continuing what Jen was telling you, we have a focus around our IT workflows in addition to other workflows. And ServiceNow is responding to our customers' changing world. That might be a change in your IT environment and landscape. That might be more specific to what's occurring now and a shift to your users' work habits and what applications and services they're using. And so we want to help you with this real world impact to your IT organization, whether it's helping to eliminate or resolve outages, whether it's making sure that you're decreasing those resolution times and helping to get rid of those manual processes. So how have you been impacted by recent changes? Is it any increase in P1, P2 incidents? Do you have remote staff? Is uptime, new services? Do you understand and have visibility to the impact of these services in the changing environments? And so what we'll focus on today is a bit about business context, applying some understanding of the impact analysis to outages, for example, providing some insights and intelligence, both using machine learning analytics, as well as our business context, and providing you the ability to have automation. And so this could be manual remediation, this could be automated remediation, and this ties back into that intelligence. And so all of this sits on, as Jen had shared, the platform of ServiceNow. So whether it's our CMDB that sits as a data foundation for so many of our workflows, or whether it's event management, which ties into your ITSM, which ties into potentially your customer service management, your portal. Show a little bit about that today. The ITOM visibility and ITOM health workflows are key to so many of our outcomes on our platform. And so as we talk about the CMDB, and I'll hint at the end how we're evolving the CMDB, I want you to think about it more than your traditional configuration management database. It can contain not just configuration changes, but also tie in code and data if you're moving more towards infrastructure as code, as if you're moving towards DevOps workflows. That's something that CMDB should encompass. Really anything in your environment that detects a change or can identify changes is something that we should bring in as a potential data source to the platform. Some of those data sources might be into the CMDB through our discovery and service mapping, for example, or other CMDB connectors. Could also be through event management, could be through change management. But all of those processes will help enrich the CMDB and provide you context and some real-time visibility into what's occurring in your environment. Ultimately, that's what your CMDB is, a representation of your environment. And as we overlay things like AIOps, those insights are providing a health overlay over how healthy your environment is. And that's why understanding those changes that are occurring in that system health are so important. And so as we talk about this, let's expand that concept of your traditional CMDB with servers and load balancers and infrastructure to what we see today, which is a changing of those compute resources from being physical servers to virtual servers, and now they're moving to containers or even to serverless. So being able to have visibility into those new environments is important. You might have converged technology with Nutanix or something else, microservices. We've kept pace with that because our customers, especially our enterprise customers, are pulling us in that direction and making it very clear to us as their technology, as their environments change, they expect their CMDB to also represent those new technologies. So we're starting to have new releases that are now at a higher cadence rather than just monthly, or sorry, rather than twice a year updates. A lot of our patterns for discovery, for example, are now coming out our monthly updates. So as soon as we have a pattern written, it's available to you on our store, and you can bring that down without doing a full upgrade to your instance. Ultimately, as our customers begin to understand the individual components that are part of their CMDB, they then mature to application dependency mapping. You know, what are the applications that are running on these server or serverless-based or APIs that are running on microservices? And how do those tie together and start to provide that service context? And that's that service map we see here in the middle. I affectionately call this the knee bone connected to the thigh bone, connected to the hip bone view, which is just what's the dependency view for everything. And let's not make this a manually. I was a customer before, like I said, I absolutely built manual service maps. You know, we couldn't keep up with them very well then, and your environments are changing and so dynamic now, there's just no chance. It has to be an automated approach, and that's what we take. And ultimately, we provide you dashboards and processes to help maintain not just the health of the CMDB, but also to help provide you mechanisms to understand the trustworthy of the CMDB, how complete, how compliant, how correct is the data there. And ultimately, that's going to help people have a trust in your CMDB data. As we mentioned earlier, these components, these devices, what we call configuration items, you can discover those and bring those into your CMDB into classes. And those are important. We have different classes because you can handle different types of devices different ways, both through ownership, both in the impact to your environment, whether you make them visible or not. And so that's to the far left here. That's what we call horizontal discovery, discovering all of these types of things. And then we pull that together with application dependency mapping. And that's starting to connect some of those together. That's starting to connect this database runs on this server. That server runs on this infrastructure, virtual infrastructure. But then we take that one step further with the service mapping, which is for most of our federal customers, the next maturity in their modeling as they move from a CMDB populated with CIs and horizontal discovery, they tend to move towards service impact, because if you're in a change and you add a CI, a server or a database, at the bottom, you want to be able to see impact analysis. You want to be able to say, well, if you're going to change that device, maybe a NetApp array, we have the relationships and the dependencies to be able to show you you're going to impact these services. And let's notify those service owners and make sure there's no conflicts with that change. Same thing we do for event management, which we'll show here, which is as I receive events in, I'm using the exact same CMDB dependencies and connections to be able to show, based on an alert coming in on a component or application, what are the impact to the services? And the services are what you're delivering to your end users. And so that's what's most important. It helps me to sift through all the noise, focus on just the events that are most worrisome or the changes that are most impactful. And we call that top-down discovery. And so as we start to draw back a little bit and talk about more holistically, discovery ITOM visibility fits within your total understanding of your environment. You're gonna have multiple data sources coming in for that. You might have discovery as the primary source for your data centers. You might tie that with endpoint management devices for computers and laptops and devices for airmen. You might tie that with other types of discovery or other types of CMDB connectors for different types of data. And so as what we mentioned with our stores, just to dive into the cloud for a moment, we do cloud discovery as well. All the major components, all the gov variants of those cloud providers. And that again allows us to bring in both the infrastructure as a service, PaaS, serverless, containers. And it might be that you're running Kubernetes in the cloud. It might be that you're running a container service in the cloud. All of that you can get access to as well. And that takes us all the way down to understanding, as I mentioned earlier, anything that changes your environment would be nice to have some visibility into. This is one example of how we're pushing that. Changes to your environment are often made now via code and via some processes. So I can't just pop my head up out of a cube and ask if anybody's working on a server. Used to work in the past, we can't do that anymore. Now I have to understand, maybe Jenkins made a change to that application and I can't assign a ticket to Jenkins. So I need to bring into the CMDB or into our platform understanding of those code CI/CD pipelines, those commits, those build and test processes, and be able to attribute all the way through the chain who's the developer who ultimately I need to turn to tie them with operations to be able to resolve this issue, maybe roll back or remediate. And as I said earlier, we have store releases. And so whether it's a store release to support our DevOps initiatives or whether it's storage, I think some of the more recent ones, AWS S3 was great to see. Kubernetes has had some improvements recently, and these come out every month. So I think Nutanix was the most recent one that just came out this past month. And again, just to repeat, this is a part of your entire maturity of your CMDB into a multi-data source aware CMDB. So we've gone from horizontal discovery to populate CMDB with your key configuration items, the things that are most important to you. We've used application dependency mapping and service mapping to be able to then tie together those different CIs into dependencies and be able to understand impact analysis, maturing to a service aware CMDB. And now this is where our most successful, our forefront federal customers are moving to, which is again, that multi-data source aware CMDB. Let's bring in data from data sources every month. We'll work on a new integration maybe. You'll have a release pipeline for that. And as you bring in that data, you'll enrich the CMDB. You'll fill in gaps in the CMDB, and ultimately you'll end up with a total asset visibility of your environment. Again, a lot of these are available through the store. I'm not allowed to give too much, but I will just say that as we talk about the evolution of the CMDB, we are going to be working with these partners, and we have several that we'll be announcing soon where we've actually rebuilt their connectors to be the newest, greatest possible connectors, including us working with them on CMDB data model work. And so making sure that you can pick up any of these integrations and they'll work within the CMDB and play nicely together. So just to recap on the CMDB, once when we've gotten there, once when we've met these capabilities, we're providing important foundational data that's going to be used throughout your ServiceNow processes, whether it's an operator and a NOC that has to understand impact, service impact, whether it's SecOps and understanding if a vulnerability comes in on this service or this server or this application, who am I going to be working with? Because they're probably going to be remediating the vulnerability. How impactful is that to the business? Do we need to wait for a period because this is a critical service that's in use, or is this a non-critical service and I can demand that to be remediated immediately? DevOps teams, as we've talked about, that understanding as environments are starting to shift. Is this a go fast? And we're, with our DevOps Agile application, we're able to start pushing change automation that allows you to determine that everything doesn't run at the same speed. Not everything needs to go through a CAB approval. Maybe things come in through your CI/CD pipeline that get to Jenkins, and then Jenkins holds, asks our change management system, can I continue or not? And with the attributes that it's provided, you're able to make a logic and decision based on that and a score of whether this is a risky release or not. And you translate that to a go fast, go slow. Go fast means it's pre-approved, go for it. It's been integrated into change, but it's automated. Sort of think about that like a pre-approved change or an emergency change. And then maybe the go slow, which is, okay, based on you're not in the window or something else, maybe there's a high risk. Maybe this team that's releasing this change has a high number of failed changes before. So just like a credit score, we're going to hold them back and say, let's have a conversation. And then we'll send that through a path where they need, an extra level of authorization, or the system will wait until that change window opens up and then immediately deploy it. And so one new feature that we have available in our current release of Orlando is certificate visibility. And so this is something our customers have asked us for, which is the ability to go out and discover not just applications and servers, but also the certificates that those web servers, for example, rely on. We had customers that had outages based on expired certificates, and it seemed like something that ServiceNow was a good fit for. So we actually built a product around this, and now is able to, within our discovery, I should say, it's a feature that goes out and discovers the certificate dates, but it also gives you the ability to manage those certificates. So again, we're a system of action. We don't just give you the visibility, give you a dashboard. My big issue with dashboards is the longer you look at them, they don't get any better. You have to take action at some point. And so this is a great example where we're able to show you where you have issues with your certificates, and then help you manage that process, including all the way down to remediating the replacement of those expired certificates or soon to be expired. So as we start to transition and talk about AIOps, we can talk about that in that larger context of IT operations management health. And for this, what we're going to do, it's very similar to change management, where we said earlier in traditional ITSM, somebody will put in a change, could be automated or manual. These configuration items will be part of the change. And you have impact analysis that says, okay, based on that and the relationships we have in the CMDB, these are the potential impacts. Let's bring them into the conversation. That's very similar to what we're doing with IT operations management health. What it does is it takes monitoring systems that you have today, brings in those alerts from those systems. Those alerts tell you this is happening on this CI. You know, this database has a performance issue, for example, and it allows us to run that same calculation to say, well, based on that alert, this is the potential systems that are impacted from that. What that allows us to do is to focus on the alerts that are tied to the most impactful services. And we'll see that in just a few moments, which is that my view actually changes. I come from the space. I was, my nickname was Captain Monitoring. I've worked in monitoring for quite some time. I've seen too many NOC operators work in a list view of alerts. And I don't know whether they do first in, first out, or they do it based on severity, or they have a lookup list printed out next to their desk, and they look up based on the naming convention, what this might be a part of. None of them I've seen has been very successful. It's really where the system provides them that insight to be able to say, based on this alert, these are the things that you should be working on. So that's what we focus on. It's more of that context from our CMDB. We'll look at that. We'll look at grouping of those CMDB, where we run analytics and machine learning to be able to create groups that are more impactful, cutting down some of that noise so that on the way in, you're focused on the fewest amount of alerts and incidents based on the number of events that you're receiving. And that insight continues with, and we'll show this as well, insight into other data within ServiceNow, incident change problem, for example, as well as knowledge base articles that might be of interest. So starts with a dashboard. I'm a big fan of this dashboard because when I was a customer, the ServiceNow, I broke the ServiceNow dashboard. I had 2,500 services. I had a lot to put on that dashboard and it did not work well. I was able to get them to make some changes to it, but ultimately I was a part of our IT Operations Management Product Advisory Council, which is a group of our customers that help to provide us feedback. And I was on that council and I was able to provide some feedback that we could have a more dynamic dashboard. Everybody agreed, and here we are now with a much more dynamic dashboard, can handle many, many more services, and it's a very, very efficient use of space. It also fits within our workspace platform. So it's the same place that your service desk analysts will start working with their cases and incidents and issues. Same place where we can have NOC operators working with their NOC view. We have the ability with operational intelligence to bring in not just the alerts. So imagine this like an iceberg. If you're only looking at the alerts from your monitoring systems, you're only looking at what's above the water. And what's below the water can sometimes be much more dangerous. And so what this allows us to do is to bring in from those systems or receive from those systems the raw metrics. So don't tell me when the CPU is over 90%, tell me the CPU every 30 seconds. Allow me to use machine learning on the ServiceNow platform to determine what's anomaly or not. And so that way, rather than using these global thresholds that maybe you have an outage that occurs, and I've definitely had this before, where an application would stop responding, not at 80 or 90% my global thresholds, but at as low as 20% CPU. Just a memory leak would deal with issues. And you couldn't throw enough memory at the server to resolve the issue. There was nothing we could do on the physical side. We had to set alerts for that. Well, anomaly alert will help us with that. That will help us to determine that Normally the system runs pretty low, but now it's 2, 3, 4 times the amount of memory it normally runs. That might be an issue. And so that's helpful insight. And we're able to do that through a number of interfaces, be it the workspace with our NOC operation view, whether it's through our dashboards and metrics views, or even mobile. So as more of our federal customers start to use our mobile interface, we've actually gone back, especially for our enterprise customers, and rebuilt a lot of our dashboards to be very mobile centric. So it'll be ready in time for that. Ultimately, if you're thinking about the day in the life of an operator, I'm going to be using these service maps. I'm going to be using the CMDB to help identify. So we'll look at one of these in depth, but essentially what I'm doing is overlaying my alerts, my system health over top of my CMDB, my service map. And that's where a lot of the insight comes from. And then I'm able to drive some automated remediations through that. So I can determine based on a group alert, for example, if it meets a certain criteria, I can have the system automatically go out and run a remediation. You might start that, and we'll look at that today with more passive, like go gather more information, go do some checks. But eventually you'll have some additional confidence that you can actually have that go and resolve issues. Hey, if the service is not responding and we reset the service, restart the service, that's passive, that's fine. We can do that all the time. And then if it resolves the issue, it's less noise for us, doesn't resolve the issue, then we can escalate it to a human to get involved. And you'll continually grow. If you look at automation candidates, something that I tried to do every week or every month, what are those remediations that are being done manually by your teams, and create some candidates that people can start to work on to automate. That's very helpful. You can even gamify that and reward those that are automating their remediations. Just to dive in a little bit into some of the machine learning, we're talking about AIOps, and AIOps is obviously artificial intelligence tied to operations. I think of it in a Calvin Hobbes quote that I saw at one point, which was, let's leave the math to the computers and all go outside and play, which I'd love to do days like today. And so that's exactly what we're doing. You don't need a data lake. You don't need data scientists. Good luck finding data scientists. They're sort of in demand right now. They're all trying to make cars drive without us. But you don't need data scientists to be able to do AIOps, because IT has very standardized data. We see some of the very same data on a lot of the systems that are out there. And the issues that we're seeing are very similar across our customers. So we have data scientists that work for us. We're a very structured platform. So there's a big advantage for that. That means that as the data is coming in, we understand the type of data, where it's coming from, what it might mean, and we can apply certain algorithms or a series of algorithms and analytics to it to provide you the insights. So this is just a quick view, being able to show you over time the additional AIOps and analytics and machine learning approaches that we've provided. And then if I break this down into a bit of classification here, we actually have a classification, which is predicting our categorization of alerts, looking for similarity between alerts. And so each of these leverages those earlier algorithms. And then NLU, which is natural language understanding. So we'll look at that as we see, we're looking at, behind the scenes, our data is looking at all the data related to the alert. And then it's looking at our knowledge base, for example, and promoting knowledge base articles that look like they might be helpful for you. And then ultimately grouping together. So we'll see that today. We'll see an alert that's grouped together. And the alerts are coming from multiple systems. And so you might have a stateful monitoring system. You might have a log-based monitoring system. You might have an application performance management system. Any number of systems are out there. And the same issue might trigger alerts in multiple monitoring systems. Well, rather than receiving 6 or 7 or 10 or 100 incidents, rather than receiving that number of alerts to have to deal with, we group them together for you based on the CMDB relationships, our machine learning, and our temporal analysis. And so ultimately this comes to being able to run at a higher speed, that quick identification and root cause, the grouping of these. So when we're creating incidents, we're creating the fewest number of incidents for the alerts that you're receiving, automatically routing those incidents to the right team. I've worked in an environment with ServiceNow where I had no service desk. I had no NOC. I had only operators in different areas. And so I had to perfect routing, and our platform is very good at that. And then ultimately getting to automating those remediation workflows. So quick hint, then we're gonna walk to a demo here. We are evolving the CMDB. We're gonna start calling it Service Graph, and it's meant to represent much more of what our customers are doing today. An example is they're storing code in the CMDB. Code is still configuration. It's a software configuration, really. But it's an extension of what CMDB has traditionally meant. So we're going to be applying this on top of our CSDM, our Common Service Data Model. If you think about it, makes sense for Service Graph to have a data model. What's nice about the CSDM data model, it's not just the CMDB classes and how they're related together. It's how different platforms, how different modules within our platform use that data. So how does application portfolio management, how does software asset management, how does customer service management, how does security, how do all those teams use the CMDB data for their insights, for their dashboards? That's what the CSDM understands, that data model, and that's going to make the CMDB and Service Graph that much more insightful. So ultimately, that's bringing us the ability to improve productivity, get you better growth, help eliminate or lessen your outages. And we can do that with our service contextuality, so that service-aware CMDB, helping to increase your automation, and then getting some resilient operations and insight into your processes. All right, based on the time,
right,
I say we hop into a demo.
All right, just a couple quick questions for you while you're going into your demo. So the first one is, what is the name of the advisory board that customers are a part of, and can someone join?
It's called a PAC, and there's actually multiple. There's a Federal Product Advisory Council, and then there's some for each individual area. And I would just say reach out to your rep and say that you're interested in helping ServiceNow. And there's multiple ways too. So while that group might meet, a couple times a year and be very specific in a certain area, feedback from our customers is welcome every day, every moment throughout the year. So if you have feedback, or if you want to be able to participate, I can guarantee you I'm looking for people to test new features right now. So, as soon as we can get you into one of those programs.
Okay, awesome. And then the next one is for authentication and access. How is ServiceNow interfacing with DoD, Air Force, PKI infrastructure?
Yeah, so the PKI infrastructure is one where we will have to leverage some additional authentication. So do we know, just to clarify, is this infrastructure as in infrastructure coming into ServiceNow as in users and CAT card, or is this PKI as far as applications and services that we're discovering?
That is not in the question, but okay. If the anonymous person would like to expand on that, I will chime in once we have that.
Okay. Yeah, I think we'll do a follow-up on that one. Let's ask for some clarification.
It was, yes, via CAC.
Okay, great. Tyler, are you on board? Do you want to address that from a CAC perspective? Because we don't directly do CAC cards. We work with partners who basically work in between the browser, if I understand this correct, in between the browser and the ServiceNow instance. And they're handling all of that authentication on the browser side. And it is successful. It does work with our customers and their authentication methods.
Hey, Christian, this is Gain. I don't know if Tyler's on or not, but
okay.
yeah, to your point, it's all done on the browser, right? So if there's an IDP, an identity provider, we just point to it, and it's all browser-based and it's SAML-based as well, right? So we once you hit an IDP, we take the SAML token, and then based on the SAML token, we authenticate the user on our end.
Great.
That help? Okay.
Okay, go ahead and continue, Christian. There are no other questions right now.
Okay, we'll do follow-up as needed there.
Yes, sir.
All right, so standard dashboard in ServiceNow, traditional interface, left-hand side, lots of different application modules. Dashboard here, I got a little map that I can light up based on alerts or incidents coming around. I have my traditional responses here. Nice little graph here. This is all stuff that we have been able to do for a decade now. Let's hop into our new workspace. Let's hop into our new operator workspace. This is what you came to see. This is the new stuff that our customers are now able to use and starting to deploy. This is that map, and I really like the fact I don't have 1,000 services here, but if you see this +2 right here, what that means is that we're going to show the most impacted services first, and within the space that we have allotted here. So if you put this up on a NOC wall as your NOC display, you're going to get all of the problem childs at the top. Everything below that's just going to say plus 100 more that are all healthy. Don't worry about those. So that's really advantageous versus our traditional event health map that we had. I can change the grouping here. So I can both make a dynamic map that individuals could use. Like, for example, just show me the services that I'm responsible for or that my team is responsible for. And we can also browse. And so we can look through service groups. You're able to build these service groups however you want, functionally, environment, dev, prod, QA, location-based, lines of business, however you want. Specific in event management, you can tie these together. I have one called digital, which brings together all my digital workflows. So that's helpful. And then from here, I'm able to look into certain services. So order status, for example, is a service that's red. I can look at the service details. That's going to open up some information about this service, both to be able to see if is it a critical service, what my entry points are, how do people interact with this service, what do I have as far as CIs that are a part of this service, any past changes, plan changes, and related alerts. So here's an example of a related alert. We can open up that alert. And so again, what you're seeing is that I never went through an alert list. I never started with just a list of the raw alerts that are coming in. I started with a service, a list of services, a map, if you would, that would show me the impact of those services. And those were red, green, or yellow based on the alerts that are impacting those services. You can send an alert to a service. You could have a transactional monitor that says, I'm checking the website. If this website's down, go tell me that this service has a problem. But what most of our customers are doing is they're actually tying those monitoring alerts to individual items. And so again, those databases, those storage, those infrastructure that's a part of that service because of our relationships and our service maps, that's what you're receiving alerts against. We're painting the map because of those relationships. Here I can see I have a high critical alert. I'm able to see through these alert details that I have some secondary alerts. So let's go take a look at those. I can see that this is a group alert and its group type is automated. There's different types of groups. So there's CMDB groups. We're just leveraging those relationships. I receive a alert against a storage device on a server, and I have an alert against an application. Group those together because those might be actually together. Automated means that we have machine learning. We have data models that have built up over time. And those data models have actually helped us to determine what should be grouped together. And I can actually mark that. I have some feedback here. Is this group helpful or not? Mark it up and mark it down. That's going to be that feedback into that data model for us, that semi-supervised AIOps model. In this case, I think it was helpful, so that's great. These secondary alerts, they are coming from SolarWinds, vRealize, Dynatrace, OEM, Oracle database. They're coming from a number of different areas, and they're also on a number of different configuration items. So some of them are on different applications, some of them are on servers, some of them are on, could be server lists or endpoints, and it's able to group them all together because of the root cause. If I look at my alert group timeline here, I show my legend, I have what was determined as a root cause, and then I have additional alerts that have come in since then, and it's grouped them all together. And again, you have some control over this. You can also have a group type of manual. So if you have something unique in your environment that you want to tie together with some logic to be able to say, when I see this, and then I have this follow-on noise, go ahead and group those together. You have that capability as well. So let's go through here. I've got several things as I'm looking at this alert. I have knowledge-based results. So again, I talked about earlier that natural language understanding. So here we have recommended action for low disk space. I can attach that. I can mark it as helpful. So attach this to the alert. Mark it as helpful goes back and reinforces that data model again, teaches it that that has been helpful. I have impacted services. So this is telling me the order status is impacted. It could be one, could be many. And again, that's leveraging those relationships. I have alert executions. This is fired off two. It could be many. It could be manual. It could be automated. These are both automated. One to create an incident, and then one ran out and ran a workflow that actually attached logs from our alerts or from another system to that incident, making that incident much more insightful. Again, this could have been a remediation that actually resolved an issue or attempted to resolve an issue. So you can see you can kind of stagger these together so that early on in the process, you might be trying to pull some information or try some low-hanging fruit. But if that doesn't work, you can have some additional remediations that are either manual or automated that can continue down that path. So just triaging this a little bit more, I can look at my insight, which I think is very helpful. I call this the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon view. This gives me my insights into incidents, changes, and problems and other alerts. And you can see for this current CI, for this current configuration, I don't have any other incidents changes. I do have a problem. But I'm more interested in these two changes because I happen to know that a lot of times changes are affecting our environment. And so what this allows me to do is look at other changes. The reason why it says related is these are not changes on the device that we're receiving the alert on, which is a server. They're changes on related items. And so that is very common in our customers' environments. You might have a change in an application. Let's say set the logs to verbose. Those logs start to fill the drive. You don't receive an alert on the application, you receive an alert on the server saying your drive is full. So that's how we tie this together with these relationships here. And so that might be helpful. I might have other incidents or problems, and I can go and tie these together. For example, I can take a child, maybe user submitted incidents. Maybe users are submitting incidents on applications, but yet I'm receiving alerts on the infrastructure. I can tie them together here and say that the parent of these user submitted incidents is actually this automated incident, this event management incident. Going back to this alert, I can, let's do, before I take action on it, let me do one more thing here. Let's hop over. We have just enough time to do this. We'll hop over into the service map. Maybe I want to dive a little bit deeper. And here's where we're going to see that view of our system. Multiple entry points on the way in, multiple applications all connected together. Underneath of each of these applications are our servers. So I'll look at the Oracle, that's my red one here. An application Oracle database running on top of a server. I can also look at additional information here. So I can look at other alerts, or if I switch this to changes, I can see, have there been any changes on this application or server or underlying infrastructure? And when I choose this, it shows me, yeah, a file's actually changed here. So that's very helpful because that could help me to determine that a change at a specific time, sort of these by the newest time, could be the root cause for this issue. And if I open up my full map, I'll show one more feature here. So I have a timeline view here. Let's set this to hours. I have a timeline view, and if I go to this timeline view, we set it to more like this, do a comparison view. Maybe set that to there. So when it was healthy to where it was unhealthy, compare for me, please. And it will do the math for us, and it'll go through and say of all of these items and everything underneath of those items, have any changes been detected? And we saw that in the other interface. I want to go a little bit deeper here. Sure enough, yes, a file was modified on this Oracle server. We can scroll through and say, oh, it was this tracked configuration file, this Aura file. And if I open that up in another window, I see a diff of that. And it says, yes, SQL trace was set to true. This could be the root cause. This could be the issue. So going back to those changes, I could determine possibly that somebody had actually put in a change, or that we detected a change that was occurred. This might be tied back to the DevOps processes where maybe something's occurred in the code change. And all this sort of ties back together again. Let me head back to this alert because I want to, with the time we have, go ahead and take an action on it. I want to expand the disk space. I've determined that the root cause is that they are actually setting, doing some debugging, for example, taking up more space than expected. And I might send them a change, a note to say, don't forget, roll back what you've done. They might be long since done testing, but they left it on. And my configuration, my detected configuration helped to determine that. But in this case, I'm gonna help them out, expand the disk space. And by expanding the disk space, I'm sort of just giving them that extra time to do that additional testing. And that's something that, again, could have been automated. So now I'm running Flow Designer. Flow Designer is our new, it's very similar to if this, then that. It takes logic based on some triggers, in this case, manual remediation. It runs a workflow, and it can even call out through Integration Hub and our pre-made spokes. It can call out to different systems. And so in this case, I might be calling out to that server. I might be calling out to that server and AWS or Azure, the infrastructure, to be able to run this. And so in this case, I'm looking for what type of storage. Is it Windows or Linux? Go and execute expand disk partition. If everything runs smoothly, then say we're completed. If not, ask for some manual intervention. And ultimately, if I go back to my operator workspace view, we'll see that order status is now decreased down to a yellow. You might be asking, why is it yellow? Why didn't it go green? Well, I resolved my issue with the Oracle database, but I'm reliant on another server. Part of this service mapping is to understand interdependencies between services. So if I resolve the issue with this other service over here, then yes, this service would turn green as well. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what we mean in our delivering high performance services with AIOps and visibility. The visibility is obviously building up the horizontal discovery which gives me these, like, for example, the server that's hosting this Oracle, the application dependency mapping that tells me this Oracle is running on this server, and the top-down discovery that said, our customers that are using order status production service are going through these endpoints, and they're using all of these dependent applications. They're all connected together. And ultimately that allows me, again, if I'm in security, whether I'm in change management, whether I'm in application portfolio management, wherever I am in the platform, like event management, I'm able to leverage that visibility to provide some context and some insight. So with that, I wanted to give some time for Q&A. I think we were talking about doing that about 10 till. How are we doing on questions, Jen?
There are currently no open questions for you to answer. So if there's anything else.
That's dangerous.
I know, that is very dangerous. So if anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask to be addressed, please feel free to enter those into the Q&A so that we can message that out and get that answered for you by Christian. If not, Christian, if there's something else that you would like to highlight in the meantime.
Sure.
I'd love to see what that looks like.
Here's a pet project for me. So if event management helps you to automate incident management. So the whole concept here is that rather than users submitting incidents saying, this airman can't do this process, and you're waiting to find out till they're affected to start your clock and start remediating it, clearly everybody's on board with, let's monitor system status health and get ahead of that, maybe even resolve issues before airmen are affected. So everybody's on board with that. Change management also should be automated. I think DevOps is the best way to talk about that, but it could be outside of DevOps, could be more traditional, which is, what's that Venn diagram of what people say they're making changes on and what they're not? And as a customer, that was one of the very first things I did. I actually went to our knowledge conference and spoke with my peers about this, which we successfully took syslog messages from our switches and brought those into ServiceNow through event management. And it wasn't an alert. It wasn't to say the switch was down. It was a configuration change. It was a syslog message anytime somebody saved a config on the switch, made a change to the configuration. And it was great because I didn't have to do a lot of extra work. I just brought that as an event, and that triggered a workflow, which changed an attribute on the CMDB. What was so nice about that is that CMDB has a timeline view, just like we saw changes here, and it knew whether there was a change request in at that time. So before I'd asked the network team, hey, how many of your changes to your network gear do you make with a corresponding change request? And they said, well, best we can. Wasn't a good number, wasn't a good comparison. After I went ahead and added that as a data source, we're able to see, oh, and I'm going to make up numbers because it was a couple years ago, but 80% of the time when we detect a change or a change is detected and sent to us, 80% of the time, ServiceNow tells us that's corresponded to a change request that somebody put in. 20% of the time they're making changes, there's no corresponding change request. Now, I never use that to go back and give people a hard time, but it was good to have that visibility, because if we have an outage, I wanted the monitoring team, I wanted the NOC to be able to say, hey, we have this outage. I don't see any changes to affect any of the systems. Oh, but we have a detected change. And that gave them that Venn diagram where it wasn't just a single circle. It was two circles that we could start to compare. And if you do that with all of your other data sources, with anything that changes your environment, you'll get a much better visibility, whether you're a NOC operator, whether you're a service owner in any of those spaces. And then that comes into problem automation as well. So the final thing I'll talk about here is, if we're talking about automating or improving the change process, then let's talk about problems. Why, if we can automate and get away from purely manual incidents, why can't we do the same thing for problems? So what we tend to see with organizations out there is that you wait until there's enough users submitting incidents, that then becomes a problem. We have an outage, for example, and it's not very accurate when you're going to track things like an SLA. Like the SLA starts from an availability perspective when users tell you they're impacted. And it might have been down for hours before that, maybe quite a bit longer. And so again, coming back to that same process you use to automate your incidents, you're receiving alerts. Here we have our alerts. I'm receiving individual alerts from these different monitoring systems. Well, certain alerts, you could create criteria. You could create alert rules that say, well, when I receive that alert, like websites down, APIs unreachable, things like that, then maybe what I need, or just Node is completely down, maybe that needs to go to a workflow that then actually builds an outage record. And that outage record could be, again, automated, but it doesn't have to be a full outage. One of the things I'd like to talk about is the degradation. So maybe if we detect that there might be a problem, an outage, we'll set the outage record to degradation. So maybe you're not filtering it against SLAs. Maybe you can have it as a pre-stage And then maybe your NOC team or your service desk, when users are impacted, they could then escalate it. And they could say, okay, a system falls in the middle of the night. Honestly, if you give it an hour or two, most of the time they'll turn around. There's no users impact. It looks like it's okay. Now, either from users coming in and submitting incidents, calling in, or real user monitoring. Maybe you have other systems that actually provide where it says users, based on logs, are actually telling us that we can see that they're having errors. They're not able to submit orders. There's failures, et cetera. Any one of those can escalate that alert, or through an alert, they can escalate that problem from just an outage degradation to a full outage. And then what's nice about that is whether it's in the middle of the night or whatever time during the day, that then could trigger a different process, like major incident management. And so I like to show this, this university webpage. It's the one we show because theirs is public. It's widely available here. Every time I go here, I'm never sure what's going to be down. Let me reload this page so we can see. They've actually published this out so that now, as part of their portal, their customer portal, they're able to show the health of their systems. They look like they're doing really good this week. I guess we have one that we can poke at here, the media site. And all of this is outage information that could be manual, but you could also automate, again, through that event management process. If I look at the timeline view, they have planned outages that have come to that. That's your change management. There's that degradation that I was talking about that could be automated, and then a full-on outage. And so as you can see, what we do is we don't treat the degradations quite as high as an outage. But that's a way, just like we talked about DevOps, not all teams need to release at the same speed. Slow is, waiting for a cab. Not everything's an emergency. You can do the same thing for outages. Not all outages are equal. Some, if they fall in the middle of the night and no users are impacted, I don't know that I want to wake my engineers up and get them on the page or get them out of bed. If I have a 24/7 organization, yes, they get it immediately. If I have an organization that's not 24/7, maybe I'll wait for there to be a couple hours, then send it to them certain times of the day. And you can tie that all back to SLAs.
Okay, we have a quick question, Christian. Is there a way to show the state based on the capability of resolution? There was an example shown where you would resolve the alert, but then the tree still showed yellow. So if you don't own or you have no control over the server, is there a way to annotate on the overall status as green or yellow? Does that make sense? So like if you can't technically resolve it, can you still, establish a rule that would help resolve?
Yeah, I'm gonna address that to the best of my ability. I think what I'm hearing is that you might have different responsibilities. So what we call that is service group ownership. And service group ownership will basically say, I'm responsible for everything within owner status. And it's within our platform that you can define that. And it's a service map that could actually contain others. So this service owner status actually has another order in it, logistics. And so in that case, we would be able to resolve our issue, but let's say that other team has to resolve their issue. You're still going to be working from a series of alerts that are probably going to make an incident. And what I'd be looking for in that case is I might have two incidents that are tied together. I would annotate that on the ITSM side. I would annotate that on my incident, for example, and say, I can close my incident, but I still have this other issue that we're dealing with. I might take both of those incidents, tie them together to a problem, and be able to say, I have an overarching problem here, and these two incidents make up that problem. One incident's resolved, I've taken care of it. One incident I've not taken care of, that's somebody else I'm coordinating with. When both of those incidents are resolved, then the overall problem is resolved as well. Hopefully that's helpful.
I think that is. If there's a follow-up question, please answer that in the, or ask that in the question, please. But I think at that point, we may be able to wrap up, Christian.
Wonderful. Well, I'm very glad that everybody's able to give me a few moments of their day and provide them with some of my experiences. Everything I've shown you so far, I've implemented as a customer. So we're showing you all things that I can tell you work and made our processes much easier. And the good news was across the board, we had glowing reviews from everybody that every step we took, it was better than what we had been doing previously. And it was easier with less effort. It allowed our teams to spend a lot more of their time focused on building meaningful dashboards and other systems, or working on interesting new things like machine learning. So I think I can recommend the same for you. This is a journey that was well worth the time and effort we put into it. Thank you, everyone.
Fantastic. Well, thank you guys, everyone. We'll give you a minute back. Hopefully we'll see you here next week for the 25th of June for our total asset management tech talk. So with that, I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you.